It began as an ordinary night sky over Southeast Asia, calm, dark, and uneventful. At 12:41 a.m. on March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, carrying 239 people toward Beijing. Families were asleep. The world was quiet, and nothing hinted that within 1 hour this flight would slip into a silence so complete it would become one of the greatest aviation mysteries of the modern era. For the passengers, it was supposed to be a routine red-eye journey. There were business travelers returning home, children who had spent their holiday in Malaysia, students heading back to university, and parents who had promised to call their families right after landing. Among them was 34-year-old engineer Tan Ser, known by colleagues for his calm, measured way of approaching any problem. 54-year-old grandmother Li Jiaying, who had spent a week visiting relatives, and 2 young boys, aged 2 and 4, who had never been on a plane this long before. Real people, real lives, all trusting the same sky above them. Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with more than 18,000 flight hours, guided the Boeing 777 into the night. First Officer Farik Hamid, young but promising, sat beside him. The weather was clear. Communication was smooth. Air traffic control logged every detail. Then, just 37 minutes into the flight, as the aircraft approached the edge of Malaysian airspace, Captain Zaharie checked in one final time. "Good night, Malaysian 370. They were the last confirmed words ever heard from the cockpit. What happened next should have been impossible. At 1:21 a.m., MH370 vanished from radar. Not descended, not diverted, not squawked a distress code. It simply disappeared. The first reaction from controllers was confusion. Pilots make mistakes, radios glitch, transponders flicker, but as minutes passed, confusion sharpened into alarm. Controllers tried again and again to reach the cockpit. No answer, no emergency signal, no automated systems activating. The plane was simply gone. The Malaysian military later confirmed that the aircraft had not crashed immediately. It had turned sharply off course. Not drifting, turning, as if directed. It curved back across the Malaysian peninsula, then headed toward the Strait of Malacca. Civilian radar couldn't see it, but military radar did. A jet the size of a building, flying far from where it should have been, in radio silence. Investigators would later say this turn required deliberate control. Someone or something had changed the plane's path. But no one knew who or why. International search teams mobilized within hours. Malaysia Airlines announced that they had lost contact with the plane. Families waited for updates, clinging to hope that this was some kind of technical failure, that the plane had diverted to another airport, or that pilots had made an emergency landing somewhere remote. But the hours stretched into days. Search vessels from Malaysia, Vietnam, China, Thailand, Australia, and the United States swept across the South China Sea. Military aircraft scanned wave patterns. Satellite imagery was fed into advanced detection algorithms. Nothing, no wreckage, no fuel slick, no debris field. It was as if the aircraft had slipped into another world. Then came a breakthrough. The kind investigators almost never receive in cases like this. Officials discovered that MH370 had been handshaking with a British satellite operated by Inmarsat. Even though all other communication systems had been disabled, this background auto-pinging continued. For those unfamiliar, a satellite handshake is a kind of digital hello, a simple connection check between a plane and a satellite. Not voice, not data, just a ping. Those pings created a ghost trail, a faint mathematical echo of where the aircraft had traveled. Investigators determined that MH370 continued flying for nearly 7 more hours after its disappearance from radar. 7 hours. Long enough to cross entire oceans, long enough to travel thousands of miles from its last known location. The final satellite ping placed the aircraft somewhere along a remote arc stretching deep into the southern Indian Ocean, an area so isolated that even shipping lanes avoid it. If the plane had gone down there, the water would have swallowed nearly everything. But again, no debris, no bodies, nothing that confirmed a crash. Media outlets pressed for answers. CNN ran near-continuous coverage. The BBC, Reuters, and the New York Times published maps, technical analyses, and expert interviews. Aviation analysts like John Goglia, a former NTSB member, called it unprecedented. Retired pilots said that even the worst mechanical failures leave some kind of trail. But here, there was none. Families pleaded for transparency. Some accused authorities of withholding information. Others feared the worst, the idea that the plane had been intentionally diverted. A criminal act, a hijacking, a pilot suicide. But investigators were restrained and factual. They found no solid evidence pointing conclusively to any scenario. Forensic analysis of the captain's home flight simulator revealed routes over the southern Indian Ocean, but experts at the FBI and Malaysian police emphasized that the data did not prove motive or intent. It was simply one piece of a puzzle with no clear edges. Authorities continued searching. More than 120,000 square kilometers were scanned in what became one of the largest, most expensive search operations in aviation history. They found nothing. It wasn't until July 2015, more than a year after the disappearance, that anything surfaced. A piece of a Boeing 777 wing, called a flaperon, washed ashore on Réunion Island off the east coast of Africa. French investigators confirmed it belonged to MH370. Over the following years, more debris washed up along the African coast and nearby islands. All were consistent with a crash in the southern Indian Ocean. But the core mystery remained unsolved. Where was the plane? Why had it flown so far off course? What happened on board? Authorities examined every possible avenue: mechanical failure, sudden depressurization, fire, hijacking, pilot incapacitation. But every theory hit a wall. Aviation experts emphasized that commercial aircraft cannot simply vanish. They leave digital footprints. They communicate continuously with multiple systems. And yet MH370 did something that modern jets should not be able to do. It disappeared almost completely. 10 years later, investigators admit that they may never know the full story. But some things are painfully clear. Families were left in limbo. Parents never recovered their children. Children grew up never knowing what happened to their parents. Spouses spent years believing that one day someone would knock on their door with news, good or bad, just so they could stop wondering. Governments worldwide re-examined aviation safety. ICAO introduced new standards for real-time tracking. Airlines upgraded satellite communication systems. And the tragedy of MH370 pushed the aviation world to acknowledge a truth few wanted to confront. Even in an age of global surveillance, advanced radar, and satellite monitoring, and a plane can still vanish. The ocean is vast. Technology, while powerful, has limits, and some answers remain out of reach. But human grief does not. Investigators say the case is not closed. In 2018, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau stated that with updated drift models and satellite analysis, they believe they know a much more precise area where the wreckage may lie. Ocean Infinity, a private American seabed exploration company, announced plans to resume the search with new technology, if Malaysia formally approves it. Families continue to push for one thing: closure. 10 years later, they hold pictures of their loved ones at vigils. They release lanterns into the sky each March. They say the hardest part is not knowing, not the grief, not the loss, the not knowing. And that may be the most haunting part of this story. Because when a plane crashes, there are answers. When a crime is committed, there is evidence. But when something vanishes, when it slips into silence without a trace, it leaves behind a different kind of wound. One that time alone cannot heal. Authorities stress that no matter how much time has passed, they remain committed to solving this case, because unraveling this mystery could prevent future tragedies, and because the 239 people on board deserve the truth. As the 10th anniversary passes, the name MH370 still echoes in the collective memory of millions, not as a headline or a statistic or a strange aviation anomaly, but as a reminder of how fragile certainty can be. Tonight, somewhere in the expanse of the Indian Ocean, the truth is still out there, waiting. And for the families who remain in the dark, that truth means everything. This story reminds us that even in a world defined by technology and constant connection, there are still moments when the unthinkable happens. Moments that challenge our belief in control, in predictability, in safety. MH370 is not just the story of a vanished plane. It is the story of 239 souls who never came home and the people who refused to stop searching for them. It is a reminder that every name on a passenger manifest is a life. Every empty seat at a dinner table echoes with questions, and every unanswered mystery carries a human cost that statistics can never measure. Perhaps the real lesson here is this: certainty is a privilege, not a guarantee.